She slid his hand over her hip and whispered, "Only touch me where my husband never dared," and that's when he knew she wasn't asking for comfort. She was asking to be ruined. It was the end of summer when I rode into the dust-swept town of Mercy Hill, a place where the sun never forgave, and neither did the people. I hadn't planned to stay, not with the weight I carried, or the trail of regrets curled in my saddlebags like coiled snakes, but then I saw her. She was standing outside the dry goods store in a red dress that looked stitched from sin-feeding scraps to a mangy dog, like she wasn't the most watched woman. I hadn't even tied off my horse before the sheriff strolled up and warned me with the kind of smile that hides a threat. "Best steer clear of Miss Lorna May," he said, squinting against the sun. "Why's that?" I asked, still staring at her silhouette in the heat. "Because she's spoken for, married, and cursed." I never believed in curses until that night. She didn't come to me directly. No, Lorna May was smarter than that. She waited until the moon was high and the wind turned quiet. Then she knocked once on the door of the room I rented above the saloon. She stepped inside like she owned the dark, and before I could say a word she closed the door behind her and leaned back against it, her fingers still wrapped around the knob like she might bolt any second. "You don't talk much," she said, looking me over. I didn't reply. Good, neither did he. That's when she crossed the floor with bare feet on wood like she was floating like something not born of this world. She laid her hand against my chest. That hand didn't tremble, not even once. "He never touched me," she whispered, "not where it mattered. Not how I begged. I should have said no. I should have told her I wasn't here for this kind of trouble. But when she took my hand in hers and placed it gently on the side of her neck just beneath her jaw, I knew this wasn't about lust. Not only this was about reclaiming something stolen, and that made it dangerous. She said one line that's lived in my bones ever since. "You can touch me, but only where my husband never did." And when I asked why, her lips barely moved. "Because I want to remember this, not confuse it with pain." That was the first night, but Lord, it wasn't the last. I didn't sleep that night, not because she stayed long, she didn't. Lorna slipped out like mist off a riverbank, leaving behind the scent of lavender and something sadder, something like shame. That didn't belong to her, but because when I closed my eyes all I could feel was the warmth of her skin where no man had ever dared to love her. I rode out the next morning trying to put distance between my hands and her memory. But Mercy Hill ain't the kind of town you ride through easy. It clings to your boots and gums up your horse's stride. It knows your sins before you speak 'em. Folks watched me different that day, eyes narrow, mouths tight. The blacksmith didn't nod like he had the day before, and when I walked into the saloon for a coffee, the bartender just slid the cup over and didn't say a word. "You met her, didn't you?" a voice muttered from a shadowy corner. I turned, and an old man was sitting there half sunk into the leather of his seat, a bottle near empty, and his eyes already full. "Met who?" I asked, though I didn't need the answer. "The preacher's daughter, the mayor's, shamed the sheriff's property, whether papers say so or not." That caught my breath. "She's married," I said. "Legally sure, but not in the way a man's supposed to hold a woman, not in the way she aches for." I left him to his ghosts and went to the stables, but my horse had been moved, stolen. No, just repositioned, a message I didn't have to ask from who. I didn't see Lorna for 3 nights, not in the street, not in the store, not by the old well where she used to sit like she was waiting on someone who'd already died. But on the 4th night I heard its soft tapping on my door, 3 knocks just like before. She stepped in wearing blue this time, an old torn dress cinched too tight at the waist like someone else picked it out for her. Her hair was pinned up, but loose strands had fallen. She didn't say a word, just walked to me and placed both hands against my chest like she was checking for a heartbeat. "I dreamed of you," she said, but in the dream I couldn't speak. I asked if she wanted to talk now. "No," she whispered, pressing her lips to my collarbone, just silence. But when I brushed the side of her back, she flinched so sharply, I thought I'd broken something. "Not there," she said, breath caught. "That's where he slammed me when I said no." My blood boiled, my jaw locked, but she grabbed my face, soft and urgent, and said, "You're not here to fight for me, just remind me I'm alive." So I did, in every inch of her he never had the right to claim. And in doing so, I began to learn Lorna May wasn't just hiding from a husband. She was hiding from something darker, something that didn't sleep in her bed, but wore his name like a badge. I asked her once, quiet after her breathing slowed in my arms, why she stayed, why she hadn't run. Lorna just traced her finger down the old scar on my shoulder and said, "Because I know what happens to girls who run. They get buried under new names or under the dirt." She wasn't being poetic, she meant it. The sheriff, Clayton Hargrove. He wasn't just Mercy Hill's lawman, he was her husband's brother, blood-bound, bound by something older than justice and deeper than fear. And her husband, Tobias Hargrove, banker, Bible reader, monster. Lorna didn't wear bruises anymore, no, what she wore was worse. Emptiness in her eyes, practiced smiles, and the kind of silence that only comes from too many years biting your tongue until it bled. The second time she came to me, I saw the mark on her wrist. Just above the lace faded, but still there rope burn, and when I touched it with the back of my knuckles, she looked away like a child expecting to be scolded. "He tied you?" I asked. She didn't answer, didn't need to. What kind of man binds what he fears, and what kind of woman stays? But Lorna May wasn't staying, not truly. She was unraveling, slowly, carefully. One night at a time, in my arms, in my bed, in the still places he had never dared touch. That night she whispered something while half asleep, and I never forgot it. He never kissed me, not where it counted. Never my lips said my mouth was too full of sin. I kissed her then, slow and deep. And for the first time she cried, not from pain but release. We had maybe 5 nights like that, 5 stolen hours where time bent around our heat and shame, had no breath to speak. But nothing in Mercy Hill goes unnoticed for long noticed. The 4th morning a letter was nailed to my door. No name, just one line written in clean looping ink: "Touch her again, and it'll bury your hands where no man finds them." Sheriff's writing, or maybe Tobias himself, didn't matter, because by the 5th night she didn't come. And by the 6th I heard a scream echo from the house on the hill, not of fear, of fury, of something finally breaking. I should have stayed away, should have packed my saddle, pointed my horse west, and let Mercy Hill rot with all its secrets. But when a woman screams like that, from deep inside her ribs like it's clawing its way out, you don't ride off, you load your gun. The Hargrove estate sat on the north rise, just past the chapel, wrapped in white picket fencing and overgrown vines, like the devil himself wanted it camouflaged in holiness. It looked perfect from the road, but closer you could hear it breathe wrong. I reached the front steps just as the scream died down. Silence after a woman screams. That's what makes the gut twist, not the cry, the hush that follows. I didn't knock, I kicked the damn door in it. Tobias Hargrove stood there like he'd been waiting, slick hair, pressed collar hands, bloodless and calm. "She is mine," he said. "No greeting, no pretense. You trespass in both law and spirit." I didn't answer him, just stepped past, scanning the room. That's when I saw her. Lorna on her knees by the fireplace, one palm pressed to her cheek, lip split open. She wasn't crying. She wasn't blinking either. Her eyes locked on me like I was a mirage, like Shed conjured me, and I wasn't real. And then with barely any strength she whispered, "I told him where you touched me." And in that moment I realized something worse than rage had bloomed in Tobias. Envy. He didn't hit her because she cheated, he hit her because she felt something he never could give. "That body's mine," Tobias snarled. "I own every breath she draws." That's when Lorna stood slowly, unshaken, like all the pain had burned clean through her. "You don't own breath," she said. "You never even gave me air." And then she turned to me, took my hand in hers, bruised fingers threading through mine like roots through earth, and she said, "Touch me now, right in front of him, right here." She whispered, guiding my hand to the soft place beneath her ribs. "That's where I keep the parts of me." He never reached. Tobias went for his pistol, but he was too slow, and my shot was too sure. He fell back against the hearth with a look I'll never forget. Not fear, not pain, confusion, like he didn't understand how someone like her could ever leave someone like him. But she hadn't left. Shed survived. I thought the town would burn me for it. Tobias Hargrove shot dead in his own home, the blood drying on the same rug where he used to read scripture and spit fire and sin. But when I stepped outside with Lorna by my side, her hair tangled, her mouth trembling but proud, there wasn't a noose waiting, there was silence and eyes. Mercy Hill always watched, but that night they didn't look away in disgust. They looked away in relief. It didn't matter that Tobias was the banker, the Hargrove's son, or the preacher's star pupil once upon a time. It mattered that people had heard her scream more than once, that bruises had whispered down her arms, and backs of knees that everyone knew. And no one moved until now. We didn't run that night. We walked through the town past the saloon, right down the main strip. With nothing to hide, she still held my hand. But I felt her shaking now. Not from fear, from release. From whatever had kept her tied up in that house like a ghost with skin. We rode out the next morning with no destination. Just her behind me in the saddle. Arms wrapped around my ribs, cheek against my back. Like she was finally resting for the first time in years. "Where do you want to go?" I asked. "Wherever he never said my name," she whispered. "Wherever I can wear red and not be called wicked." She slept most of that ride. And I let her. That night by a creek bank lit with fireflies, she took my hand again, placed it against her stomach. Not a flinch, no boundaries now. "You've touched me where no one else has," she said. "Now, I want to be touched where I never let myself go." And when we kissed, really kissed, with the night wrapped around us and the past laid to rest, this wasn't just about her surviving him. It was about her choosing herself, and maybe, just maybe, choosing me. We spent 6 days crossing land that didn't belong to anyone. Wild plains, soft hills, empty skies, the kind of stretch that made you believe in starting over. She spoke more now, about the things that didn't matter, and some that did. Told me how she used to run barefoot through lavender fields as a girl, how her mother sang while hanging linens, how Tobias came calling in a black coat with his dead father's ring, and how silence became her survival. "When a man speaks holy things in public," she said, "but cuts you with his stare in private, you learn quick how to play dead with your eyes open." I didn't say much, just listened, held her hand, let her heal in the quiet. But healing ain't always peaceful, it stirs the past. And one night when the wind turned cold and the stars blinked like they knew secrets we didn't, she jolted upright in her sleep, gasping. "He's still watching me," she whispered, not in a poetic sense, literal. Tobias had a twin. Nobody mentioned him back in Mercy Hill. No one dared. But I remembered a line from that drunk in the saloon. The preacher's daughter, the mayor's shame, the sheriff's property. Sheriff Clayton Hargrove, he wasn't just the law. He was family. And he hadn't buried his brother alone. He wanted Lorna back, not because of love, but because she was a symbol, a thing he thought belonged on a leash. The last night before the storm hit, we found an old barn near Canyon Hollow, rotted roof, hay still on the floor, enough to rest. She stood by the door as I built a fire, hair lit gold in the sparks, and said without looking at me, "If they come for me, don't shoot." I stood, heart pounding. "You think I'd let them take you again?" "No," she said. "I think you to die for me, but I want you to live for me instead." And then she did something she hadn't before. She undressed, slowly, carefully, not like a seduction, like a ceremony. Each button was a ghost, each layer a burial, until she stood there, bare, breathing free. "Now," she said, stepping toward me, "touch me, not where he never did, but where I never let myself feel loved." And when I did, it wasn't lust, it was resurrection. The morning after she gave herself to me fully, completely, without condition or caution, was the first time I saw her smile without weight. She looked different, not just in the body, in the spirit, like something cracked had finally mended, not all the way, but enough to breathe again. We were sipping coffee by the barn door when we heard it. Horses. 3 of them, not galloping, patrolling. Riders moved slow when they weren't, afraid of what they'd find. Sheriff Hargrove flanked by 2 deputies riding up with dust curling behind them like smoke off a gun barrel. He didn't dismount, just tipped his hat and grinned. "Took me longer than I liked, but I knew you'd come here, Lorna." She stepped beside me, no fear in her voice now. "Funny you always chase things you couldn't own." His grin twitched. "You're his widow now," he said, eyes cold legally, "which means your land defaults to the estate and your body. Ain't property," I cut in, stepping forward. "Not anymore. The sheriff looked down at me like he was staring at a problem, not a man. "You don't belong here, stranger. Neither does your kind of justice." He chuckled, then nodded to his men. "She comes quietly. We don't bury you next to Tobias." Lorna didn't wait for my answer. She walked toward them slow and deliberate, and I felt my heart split clean down the middle. But she didn't stop at them. She passed the sheriff's horse, reached into the deputy's saddlebag, and pulled out his gun. In one fluid motion, she cocked it and aimed. I said, "Don't touch me," she said, and now I mean it louder. The sheriff froze, his hand twitched near his holster, but she didn't blink. "You think I won't pull this trigger?" she asked. "After what you did, after watching him bruise me with your silence." No one moved, not even me. Because this wasn't my moment. It was hers. And she needed them to see what real power looked like. "You want my land," she said, stepping closer, voice like firewood catching. "You want my skin, my breath, my grief. Then bury me right now, because you'll die free before I ever live quiet again." She pointed the gun at the sky and fired. One shot. The sound shattered the valley. Birds rose in a black cloud, and the sheriff backed away. He said nothing, just turned his horse and rode off. That shot she fired into the sky did more than scatter birds. It shattered something inside her. Not in a way that broke her, in a way that freed her, after the sheriff and his boys retreated down that canyon trail, leaving nothing behind but their pride. Lorna stood there breathing like she was tasting air for the first time. Her hands were still shaking from the recoil, but her eyes didn't flinch anymore. She handed the gun back to the deputy's saddlebag like it didn't belong to either of them, like it never had. "That's the last time I point a gun," she said softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been surviving for so long I forgot I could live." I wrapped my arms around her, not out of fear or need, but reverence, and for the first time she leaned into me like she trusted it. We left that barn before nightfall and made camp by a stream so quiet you could hear the stars whispering to each other. That's where she told me her real secret. "It wasn't just the touch he denied me," she said, running her fingertips over the bones of her wrist. "It was the choice to say yes, to say no, to offer myself without fear." And then gently, she took my hand and pressed it against her heart. "You didn't just touch me where he never did. You touched me how he never could. I didn't know if we had a future. Didn't know if the law would circle back or if Mercy Hill would find new reasons to chain her to that town. But I knew this. She was no longer someone's wife, no longer someone's shame. She was her own name now. And she said it out loud for the first time. That night, looking up at the sky, Lorna May Holloway, daughter of fire, lover by choice, survivor by blood. Then she turned to me, eyes soft, lips parted, and said, "Now, ask me where you can touch me next." And when I whispered it, "Where and how?" she smiled and said, "Good. Now do it slow. I want to remember this for the rest of my life." We made it to Cedar Hollow by the next full moon, quiet place. Just a chapel, a feed store, and a town square where the wind spoke louder than the people. No one knew her name there, no one knew mine. And that's how we wanted it. We rented a room above the bakery. Mornings smelled like warm cinnamon. Evenings tasted like peace. She started humming again. Little tunes with no lyrics, said her mother used to hum the same when hanging laundry back before the world taught Lorna to bite her tongue. But what struck me most was how she looked now. Not made up, not dressed to survive the eyes of men, just her soft barefoot, sun-kissed. And sometimes I'd catch her watching me from across the room with a look that made my ribs ache in the best way. One evening she pulled the curtains back and watched the rain trickle down the glass, quiet as dusk. "You ever think this is real?" she asked us, free together, breathing like nothing's chasing us. I walked over, wrapped my arms around her waist, and rested my chin on her shoulder. "I know it's real," I said, "because I fear losing it." She turned, eyes searching mine. "Then promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. If they come again, don't protect me first, stand beside me, let me draw the first line." That's when I knew Lorna wasn't afraid of violence anymore. She was afraid of being silenced that night when we lay together. Her body didn't carry tension. It carried invitation. Her hand on my chest was no longer seeking safety. It was asking to be remembered. And just before sleep took her, she murmured against my throat, You didn't save me. You reminded me I was worth saving. There's a moment in healing. No one tells you this. Where the danger isn't the past chasing you. It's forgetting who you had to become to survive it. For Lorna, that moment came when we visited the chapel in Cedar Hollow, just a small, dust-worn building with peeling paint and a warped cross tucked behind the general store. She walked through the doors like she was facing down an old ghost. And maybe she was. She didn't kneel, didn't pray, just stood in front of the altar, fingers trailing across the wood grain, and said, "You used to make me kneel and confess things that weren't even sins," she turned to me. Then lips tight, voice thick. "You ever been shamed for wanting to be touched? Not used, not claimed, just held like you mattered." I didn't speak, just stepped beside her, laid my palm on the small of her back. She leaned in, eyes closing like the heat of my hand was medicine. "You know why I let you touch me first?" she whispered. "Why?" "Because you never reached, you waited." There was silence after that, long and full. And when we stepped outside, she took a deep breath like she was breathing for both of us. "I want a garden," she said out of nowhere. "Lavender, peonies. Maybe tomatoes, something that grows only if it's tended." That night, we made love differently. Not desperate, not hidden, but slow, with the windows open. And the wind carrying her laughter afterward. She curled into me and whispered, "Next time someone asks me who touched me first, I'll say your name, not because you were the first man I loved, but because you were the first one who ever loved me." Spring found us, not just in the weather, but in the way she smiled, in the way she reached for my hand in the mornings, like it was second nature. Her hair grew longer, her voice got louder. She started dancing barefoot in the kitchen while bread rose in the oven. We planted that garden. It was small at first. 2 rows, some wild mint and seeds she bought from a toothless woman at the market. The woman said they came from the south, where the dirt still remembers freedom. Lorna knelt in that soil like it was sacred. She'd hum while planting, and every so often glance up at me and smirk like I was the lucky one. And I was. But mercy has a way of testing a man when he least expects it. I came home one afternoon from picking up supplies to find the front door cracked open, a chair knocked over, and the fire out cold. Her name died on my lips the moment I whispered it. Then I saw it. Not blood, not signs of struggle, just her journal open and a note. Fresh ink folded once. I picked it up like it might burn me and read 4 words that buckled my knees. "Don't follow. I'm safe." But I knew Lorna, and I knew what it cost her to walk away. She wasn't running out of fear. She was walking into something that still needed to be faced, something she didn't want me to carry with her. I spent that night staring out the window, her lavender soap still lingering on the air, her garden silent like it was waiting for her return. And I knew, if I really loved her, I'd give her the choice, just like I always had. I waited 7 days. Didn't tea right after her, didn't question the note, just watered her garden, turned down the bed, kept her tea warm every morning. Like some part of me believed she walked through the door right around sunrise. On the 8th day, the storm rolled in. Thunder like distant gunfire, rain that came heavy and hard. The kind that makes you wonder if the earth's trying to cleanse itself of everything rotten. And then I heard it. A knock. 3 times. Slow, steady. Like the first time she ever came to me in Mercy Hill. I opened the door, heart already racing. And there she was, soaked through, mud on her dress. Hair wild. Cheeks flushed like she'd just outrun hell, and liked the taste of it. She didn't wait for me to speak. Just stepped inside and dropped her bag. Then she looked at me. Eyes fierce, alive, and said, "I buried the past. Not with blood, not with fire, just truth. I told them what he did. I showed them the bruises. I said his name out loud. And it didn't tune on me anymore. I stepped forward, cupped her face, and asked the only question that mattered. 'And what do you want now?' She smiled, a smile that broke something wide open inside me. 'I want roots. I want you. I want to be touched without fear, and kissed without apology.' And then she kissed me, right there in the rain. No permission needed, no ghosts left to silence. Just 2 people choosing each other with nothing in between. We didn't go back to Mercy Hill. We didn't have to. Because everything she needed to become, she already was, and everything I touched from that moment on was sacred. Not because it had never been touched before, but because it had finally been touched right.